Welcome, friends. Picture a place where every breath is work, where water boils at the temperature of warm tea, where nighttime temperatures drop below freezing even in summer, and daytime sun burns so intensely your skin cracks within hours. Today, we'll explore how people didn't just survive in the Andes at altitudes of 14 to 16,000 feet, but built one of the most sophisticated civilizations in world history. How human bodies changed over millennia to function where modern tourists pass out within hours. How Inca engineering defeated gravity, cold, and the absence of wheels. But first, an important note. We're working with archaeological reconstruction, Spanish conquistador chronicles, and ethnographic data from modern descendants of the Incas, the Quechua and Aymara peoples. This isn't fiction, but it's not absolute truth either. It's the best approximation science can provide when combining excavated ruins, colonial records, and observations of those still living at these heights.
And one more critical point. When we marvel at Inca achievements, remember, this is the result of millennia of trial, error, and extinctions. Before the Incas came Chavin, Tiwanaku, Wari, cultures that also tried to master altitude. Some vanished without trace. Others left only ruins as warnings. The Incas were survivors, but not the only ones who tried. Now get comfortable. Seriously, adjust your pillows, grab a blanket. Take a moment to hit that like button and subscribe if you enjoy what we're doing here. And drop a comment. Have you ever been above 7,000 feet? How did you feel? Always curious to hear from those joining us. Let's begin our quiet journey into the world of thin air.
Your lungs are a pump designed for sea-level air. Transport that pump to 14,000 feet, and it's trying to extract oxygen from what's basically thin soup. Heart races, stairs become mountains, head spins. Welcome to altitude sickness. Now look at Andean peoples. Skeletal studies show expanded rib cages, ribs at different angles. Lung volume 20 to 30% larger. But it's not just size, it's efficiency. More alveoli mean more oxygen transfer. Think of it like upgrading from dial-up to fiber optic. The heart adapts too. Right ventricle enlarges to push blood through lungs harder. Natural turbocharging, built over thousands of generations. Your heartbeat at 14,000 feet? A deep thud echoing in your chest. Andean peoples live with this daily. Their cardiovascular systems aren't struggling, they're optimized. Tourists ascending in hours, hearts hit 120 beats per minute at rest, temples throbbing, nausea rising, body screaming, "We didn't sign up for this." But lungs and heart are only half the equation. The real magic happens in your blood. When doctors first tested Andean blood, they thought the lab screwed up. Red blood cell count 30 to 40% higher than normal. Sea level 5 million erythrocytes per microliter. Andes 6 to 7 million. Not disease, adaptation. Think of erythrocytes as Amazon delivery trucks for oxygen. Sea level has enough trucks for comfortable 2-day shipping. Altitude? You need to expand the fleet or your organs start leaving 1-star reviews. Bodies produce more red cells via erythropoietin. Bone marrow goes into overdrive. But there's a catch. Thicker blood means the heart works harder. Everything's connected, which is why that enlarged, powerful heart we just talked about matters so much. Interesting comparison. Tibetans took a different evolutionary path. Instead of more blood cells, they dilated blood vessels. Two solutions to the same problem, refined over millennia in different mountain ranges. Tourists can adapt too, but it takes weeks. First few days you're running on your lowland fleet. It's like trying to stream Netflix on 1990s internet. That metallic taste in your mouth after a short walk? That's your blood struggling. Andean peoples never experience it. Their blood came pre-installed for altitude. But even perfect blood needs fuel. And at altitude, food isn't pleasure. It's engineering.
At 14,000 feet, your metabolism runs like a gaming laptop with max graphics, streaming to Twitch while mining crypto. Every breath burns calories. Even sleep costs more energy than sea level rest. Incas figured this out through brutal trial and error. No textbooks, just eat wrong, die. Eat right, survive. Solution? Potatoes. But not your grocery store russets. Incas cultivated 3,000 varieties, from purple tubers the size of marbles to massive yellow ones. Why? Potatoes grow where wheat and corn tap out. They handle frost, poor soil, wild temperature swings, the Navy SEALs of crops. Nutritionally, they're concentrated carbs, fast energy. Your body at altitude is a phone at 5% battery. Potatoes are the fast charger. Add quinoa, complete amino acid profile, protein shake in grain form. And charqui, dried llama meat. Yes, that's where jerky comes from. High protein, minimal fat, shelf stable for months. Basically paleo meal prep circa 1400 AD. Smell of boiled potatoes in a mountain hut meant you'll make it through today. Modern hikers bring energy bars and trail mix, then wonder why they feel like garbage. Because your Cliff Bar was engineered for Colorado Springs, elevation 6,035 feet, not Cusco, 11,100 feet. But even potatoes spoil. No refrigeration. Temperatures swinging 40 degrees daily. How did Incas solve long-term storage without modern tech? That's where it gets interesting. 14,000 feet. No refrigerators, no canning factories, no DoorDash. Just you, your harvest, and 6 months until the next one. Problem: potatoes rot within weeks. Nighttime cold freezes them. Daytime heat starts decomposition. Moisture breeds mold. Inca solution: chuño, freeze drying that NASA would later call sublimation. Except Incas did it without vacuum chambers or PhDs. Process was brutal but brilliant. Spread potatoes on the ground. Nighttime temperatures hit 10 below 0 Fahrenheit. Potatoes froze solid. Water inside turned to ice crystals. Morning sun at altitude isn't gentle. It's a UV blowtorch through thin atmosphere. Ice in potatoes evaporated directly to vapor, skipping the liquid phase entirely. Sublimation. Then came the hard part. Women and children walked barefoot on frozen potatoes, squeezing out remaining moisture. Imagine the sensation: cold, mushy mass underfoot, smell of earth and frost-damaged vegetation. Like stomping grapes, except instead of wine, you're making survival insurance. After 5 to 7 days, dry, light chunks, chuño, shelf-stable for years. 1 kilogram of fresh potatoes became 200 grams of chuño. But those 200 grams retained all energy, all carbs, all calories. Like zip compression for food. To eat it, just rehydrate. Tasty? Nobody said survival was delicious, but it worked. It meant the difference between life and starvation during drought or crop failure. Incas built state warehouses, kulka, storing tons of chuño. When one valley starved, the state opened reserves. Food stamps, but actually food, not paper. Smell of rehydrating chuño, sour, earthy, not appetizing to modern noses. But to Andean peoples, it smelled like security, like winter wouldn't kill your family. Modern hikers carry freeze-dried meals in foil pouches, chemical preservatives, artificial flavors, not realizing what they're holding is 500-year-old Inca tech, just mass-produced.
But even unlimited food means nothing if your body's screaming in pain. Enter the plant that changed everything. Picture waking up every morning with a headache. Every staircase leaves you gasping. Every physical task aches from oxygen deficit. This is unacclimatized life at altitude. Now picture a plant that kills pain, adds energy, suppresses hunger, and helps breathing. Legal. No side effects when used properly. This is coca leaf. Not cocaine. That's like comparing grapes to vodka. Coca leaves contain alkaloids, but in trace amounts. Chewing leaves is a mild stimulant, not a drug. Andean peoples chewed coca for millennia. Archaeological finds show even pre-Inca cultures carried special pouches for coca leaves. This was daily life, like coffee is for us. Process is simple. Take a handful of dried leaves, pack them in your cheek. Add a bit of lime or ash. Activates the alkaloids. Chew slowly. Let saliva do the work. Feel slight tongue numbness? It's working. What happens next? Alkaloids enter bloodstream through mouth tissue. They constrict blood vessels, reducing tissue oxygen demand. Paradox: less oxygen needed when there's already less oxygen.
Second effect: appetite suppression. At altitude, food is expensive calorically. Your body's screaming, "Feed me," every hour. Coca says, "Wait, you're not that hungry." Third effect: mild euphoria. Not a high, just relief. Headache fades. Fatigue becomes manageable. Like ibuprofen and Red Bull combined, but natural. Incas made coca sacred. Only nobility could grow and distribute it. It was currency, payment, ritual tool. State construction workers received coca leaves as part of compensation, like salary plus health insurance. Modern tourists drink coca tea in Cusco hotels, hoping to dodge altitude sickness. But tea is weak. Real effect comes from chewing, slow alkaloid release through mucous membranes. Coca isn't a solution to altitude, it's a crutch. But sometimes a crutch is the difference between reaching home or collapsing on the trail. Yet even with perfect diet and coca's help, one fact remains. If you're not adapted, altitude will break you violently.
You wake up, heads splitting, not hurting, splitting. Every light ray feels like an ice pick. Every sound is a siren at max volume. You try standing. Dizziness, nausea rolls in like a wave. 3 steps to the bathroom and you're gasping like you ran a marathon. Heart hammering so loud you hear it in your ears. This is acute mountain sickness. Starts around 8,000 feet. At 14,000, it hits almost every unacclimatized person. What's happening? Your brain's a sponge that needs constant oxygen saturation. At altitude, there's less oxygen. Brain starts swelling, microscopically. But even microscopic swelling inside your skull is catastrophic. Symptoms escalate. First, mild headache, then exhaustion, then nausea. And if you don't descend, it gets medieval. Pulmonary edema. Fluid leaks into alveoli, those tiny sacs where oxygen transfers. You try breathing, but each breath gurgles, like sucking the last drops of a milkshake through a straw. Except it's the sound of your own lungs drowning. Cerebral edema. No longer just pain, hallucinations, confusion. You can't remember where you are, why you're here, who these people are. Andean peoples watch tourists with pity. They've seen this hundreds of times. Healthy, strong people thinking, "I'm fit, I'm tough, I'll be fine." Then they're lying in tents, crying from pain. Simple acclimatization rules exist. Ascend slowly. No more than 1,000 to 1,500 feet elevation gain per day above 8,000 feet. Drink water constantly. Don't overexert.
sleep lower than you climbed. Tourists ignore these rules. They fly into Cusco, 11,000 feet, and immediately start sightseeing. Bodies can't adapt that fast. They pay with nausea, headaches, sometimes with their lives. Smell in a tourist's room with altitude sickness? Vomit, sweat, fear. Smell of a body screaming, "I wasn't built for this place." Andean peoples? Their children are born at this altitude. First breath is thin air. Lungs and hearts adapted in the womb. They don't understand how you can suffer from what's just air to them. Mountains don't punish arrogance intentionally. They just exist. Either you're ready for them or you're not. But bodies are only the first battle. True altitude survival required more than biology. It required engineering that would make modern architects jealous. Night at 14,000 feet. Temperature drops to 10 below Fahrenheit. Wind screams through rocks. You're lying in your house and you're warm. How? No electricity, no gas, no central heating. Incas built houses like Yeti coolers. Every detail had function, zero decoration, pure survival. Walls 2 feet thick. Not because Incas loved thick walls, because thick stone is thermal mass. Think of walls as batteries for heat. Daytime sun warms the stone. Nighttime stone slowly radiates that heat back inside. Material? Adobe. Unfired bricks made from clay, straw, and llama dung. Yes, dung. It acted as binder and insulator. Fresh adobe smelled earthy, slightly animal. Once dried, the smell disappeared. Roofs used thick ichu grass, 2 feet of it overhead. Natural fiberglass insulation, but better. Air pockets between stalks trapped heat. Rain ran off without penetrating. Windows? Tiny or non-existent. Every window bleeds heat. Incas understood this instinctively. Better to live in darkness than freeze at night. Doors, low and narrow. You had to duck to enter. Not about respect, about minimizing heat loss when doors opened. Floors, packed earth. Absorbed moisture, stored heat. Top layer, straw mats or llama hides, insulating from ground cold. Inside, hearth near the wall, not center. Smoke exited through a small roof hole or simply seeped through thatch. Yes, it was smoky, eyes watered, but the choice was simple, smoke or freeze to death. Sound of wind outside, howling, whistling through rocks. Inside, silence. Thick walls deadened everything, free soundproofing. Modern tourists sleep in heated hotels and complain about cold. Andean peoples sleep in stone thermoses, warmed by heat their walls stored all day. But even the warmest house means nothing without water. And on steep Andean slopes, water is the hardest engineering problem Incas had to solve. Water at altitude is paradoxical. It's everywhere, but in the wrong places. Snow on peaks. Streams racing down slopes at breakneck speed. Rain turning soil to mudslides within minutes. You need water for drinking, irrigation, livestock. But if you just dig a channel downslope, first rain washes it away. And if you don't control runoff, water destroys your terraces, collapses houses, triggers landslides. Incas became hydroengineering masters without textbooks or calculators. Just observation, experience, and mistakes buried under avalanches. Inca aqueducts weren't Roman arches. They were stone channels carved into cliffs or laid along slopes, stretching dozens of miles, carrying water from mountain springs to cities and fields. Secret? Gradient angle. Too steep, water flows too fast, erodes the channel. Too shallow, water stagnates, grows algae. Incas found the sweet spot, roughly 2 to 3 degree slope. How did they measure without levels? Trial and observation. Channel eroded? Make it shallower. Water stagnated? Increase slope. Like debugging code through iteration, except failure meant losing next year's crop. Channel material. Cut stone. Perfectly fitted blocks, no mortar. Water flowed over smooth surfaces without seeping through cracks. Sound of water in stone aqueduct, burbling, echoing off walls. The sound of life itself. But aqueducts were only half the system. Drainage was equally critical. Under each terrace, Incas laid layers of different-sized rocks. Large stones at bottom, smaller above, then gravel, then topsoil. When rain fell, water permeated soil but didn't pool. It drained through rock layers, exiting via holes in terrace retaining walls. Modern construction drainage, built 500 years ago. Without this system, terraces would have washed away in one rainy season. Landslides would have destroyed entire valleys. Incas understood. Water is both blessing and curse. Take what you need, divert the excess. At Machu Picchu, 60% of construction is underground. Not building foundations, drainage systems. Incas spent more effort preventing water damage than building the city itself. But even with water and warm houses, Incas couldn't exist in isolation. Empire required communication, trade, management. For that, they needed roads. Special roads that could conquer mountains. Imagine running an empire the size of Western Europe. No phones, no internet, no wheels or horses, just your feet, mountain trails, and 15,000 miles of roads connecting everything. Incas built Capac Ñan, the Great Road. Not one road, but a network. 2 main highways, one along the Pacific coast, another through Andean ridges. Between them, hundreds of connecting paths. Inca roads weren't Roman paved highways. They adapted to terrain. On plains, wide, stone paved. In mountains, narrow, carved into cliffs, sometimes just 3 feet wide. Stairs, thousands of stairs. When slopes got too steep for normal paths, Incas built steps. Picture climbing 3,000 feet vertically on stone stairs, carrying cargo. Daily reality for porters and chasqui, empire messengers. Chasqui were relay runners, young men selected for endurance and speed. They didn't run entire distances from Cusco to coast, that's impossible. Instead, relay system. Every 5 to 7 miles, Tombo, a rest station. Chasqui ran with message to next station, handed it to fresh runner, rested. Next runner continued, like Pony Express, but on foot in mountains. Speed. Message from Cusco to coast, about 150 miles, arrived in 1 day. Faster than horse mail in many parts of medieval Europe. The pace of Chasqui feet on stone road. Rhythmic, relentless. Heavy breathing at altitude, whistling through thin air. In hand, quipu, knotted strings, Inca information recording system. Each knot, each color, data. Taxes, census, orders. Here's a myth worth busting. Incas built great civilization without the wheel. False. Incas knew wheel principle. Archaeologists found children's toys with wheels. But wheels in Andes were useless. Picture a cart on narrow mountain trail, or on stairs, or on suspension bridge. It gets stuck in 100 feet. Llamas could go where no cart could. Incas weren't primitive, they were practical. Bridges. Incas built suspension bridges from woven vines and grass. They swayed over chasms, creaked under weight. Scary? Absolutely, but it was the only way to cross deep gorges. Each community maintained bridges in its territory. Once yearly, bridges were dismantled and rewoven. This was part of mita, labor obligation. Don't maintain it? Bridge falls, your whole valley gets isolated. Inca roads still exist. Some became tourist routes, but walking them, you feel it. Every step, every stone, labor of thousands who understood that without roads, empire doesn't exist. But roads and bridges are just infrastructure. Real engineering miracle waited on mountainsides, where Incas turned vertical cliffs into fertile fields. You're standing at mountain base, looking up. Slope rises at 45 degrees. To normal people, this is a wall. To Incas, this is farmland. Terraces, or andanes, steps carved into mountainsides, each 5 to 30 feet wide, rising hundreds of feet vertically, like giant stairways to sky. Why terraces? Because flat land in Andes is catastrophically scarce. Food demand is high. Choice is simple: farm the slopes or starve. Building a terrace started with retaining wall. Stone blocks, perfectly fitted without mortar. Wall height 3 to 15 feet. Had to support tons of soil, water, crops. Behind wall, layered system. First, large stones for drainage. Then, smaller stones. Then, gravel. Top, fertile soil, sometimes carried from valleys on human backs. Each layer had function. Large stones at bottom let water through but prevented soil settling. Smaller stones filtered water. Gravel retained moisture. Topsoil on top, that's where crops grew. Drainage holes in retaining walls. Small gaps where excess water drained from upper terrace to lower. Without them, terraces would become swamps or slide away after first rain. Microclimate magic. Each terrace had its own temperature. Lower terraces, warmer. Corn and peppers grew. Middle, potatoes and quinoa. Upper, near snow, only hardiest crops or llama pastures. Incas used this vertical zoning. One valley could grow dozens of different crops at different altitudes, like having multiple climate zones on one slope. Terrace irrigation, separate sorcery. Water channeled from upper terraces to lower. Each terrace got its portion. Excess flowed down. Gravity-fed system. No pumps needed. Sound of water cascading terrace to terrace. Trickling, splashing. Smell of wet soil after irrigation. Earthy, fresh. Smell of life on a mountain slope. But there's harsh truth. Building one terrace took months. Hundreds of people moved stones, dug, laid layers. To feed empire, they needed thousands of terraces. This was colossal labor, organized by state through meta system. Modern farmers look at Inca terraces and realize this is more efficient than many modern methods. Terraces don't need pesticides. Water washes pests away. They don't need machines. Everything's done by hand. Drainage prevents soil erosion. But terraces don't work themselves. They need draft power, transport for goods, source of wool and meat. Enter the unique animal without which Incas simply wouldn't exist. Picture the perfect mountain animal. Eats grass that grows where most plants quit. Withstands cold down to -4 Fahrenheit. Walks narrow mountain trails where horses would break legs. Carries loads up to 70 pounds for 20 miles daily. This is a llama. Without it, Inca Empire wouldn't exist. Llama isn't just transport. It's Swiss Army knife for survival. Meat, food. Wool, clothing and blankets. Hide, shoes and bags. Bones, tools. Dung, fuel and fertilizer. Even urine was used in textile dyeing. Domesticated roughly 4,000 to 5,000 years ago. Incas didn't invent llamas, but perfected their use. Every family owned several llamas. Wealthy owned herds of hundreds. Llamas don't eat much. They're fine with ichu, tough grass growing on barren slopes. Like running an economy car on cheap gas. Cows would need rich pastures. Llamas graze where nothing else grows.
Llama temperament. Stubborn. If a llama decides load is too heavy, it lies down mid-trail. You can beat it, drag it, won't budge. You must remove part of load, like built-in overload protection. But there's a problem. Llamas spit. When irritated, they gather cud in mouth and spit. Accuracy, high. Smell, sour, disgusting. Green, slimy mass that sticks to clothes. Andean peoples learned reading llama body language. Ears back, head raised, it's about to spit. Back away. Llama caravan in mountains. Sound of bells on necks, hoofbeats on stone, snorting and grumbling. Llamas don't moo or neigh. They make low throat sounds, like rumbling. Incas used llamas for transporting everything: food, textiles, weapons, even gold. Caravan could have hundreds of animals, walking single file on narrow trails. This was Empire's logistics system, running without fuel or maintenance. Alpacas, llama cousins. Smaller, fluffier, softer wool. Alpacas weren't used for cargo. They were bred exclusively for wool. Alpaca wool is finer than sheep's, warmer than cotton. Alpaca clothing was status symbol. Llamas and alpacas aren't just animals, they're survival partners. They adapted to altitude same as humans. Their blood has more erythrocytes. Their lungs are more efficient. This is parallel evolution with humans of Andes. Modern tourists see llamas and think, cute animal. Andean peoples look at llama and think, that's my wealth, my transport, my clothing, my food. Llama is the difference between comfort and poverty at altitude. But even having terraces, llamas, roads, and houses, Incas understood. True security is location. That's why they built cities in the most inaccessible places, where mountains themselves became defense. You're standing at cliff edge. Below, 2,000 feet down, Urubamba River looks like thin thread. Around, vertical cliffs covered in jungle. Behind, mountain rises another 1,000 feet. Between them, a city, Machu Picchu. Why here? Why not in valley where building's easier? Why not near water where it's convenient? Answer's simple: security. Machu Picchu isn't capital, not trading center, probably royal estate, sacred site, or crisis refuge. Location chosen by one criterion: inaccessibility. To reach Machu Picchu on foot takes days on narrow trails, climbing thousands of feet. Enemy army can't just march here. It exhausts itself before arrival. City built on mountain ridge between two peaks, Machu Picchu, Old Mountain, and Huayna Picchu, Young Mountain. Ridge is natural platform. 3 sides, cliffs. 4th, single narrow trail, easily defended. But location isn't just defense, it's microclimate. At 7,900 feet, Machu Picchu sits below permanent snowline but above tropical disease zone. Warm enough for life, not hot like jungle. Clouds. Machu Picchu often wrapped in clouds. They rise from valley mornings, envelop city, then dissipate under sun. Adds mystique, but also practical benefit. Clouds bring moisture. Dew settles on plants, collects in springs. Water source inside city. Incas found natural spring on mountainside, built system of 16 fountains. Water flowed by gravity, upper fountain to lower. Clean mountain water, cold even in summer. Sound of water in Machu Picchu fountains, trickling, echoing off stone walls. This was sound of civilization in middle of wilderness. Terraces at Machu Picchu weren't just scenic. They grew corn, potatoes, coca.
City was self-sufficient. Even if roads blocked, it could feed itself for months. Architecture. Granite buildings, cut and fitted without mortar. Some stones weigh tons. How were they lifted to this altitude? Humans. Hundreds dragging them on ropes and logs up slopes. Why such effort? Because city had to be eternal. Granite doesn't rot, doesn't crumble from moisture. Perfectly fitted blocks survive earthquakes. Stones shift during tremors but return to place. Intihuatana, hitching post of sun. Stone pillar in city center. Astronomical instrument and ritual object. Incas marked solstices here, determined planting and harvest times. But most amazing thing about Machu Picchu, Spaniards never found it. City remained hidden 400 years. Jungle swallowed it. Only in 1911 did American historian Hiram Bingham stumbled upon it accidentally. Machu Picchu is culmination of Inca engineering. Everything they learned about water, stone, terraces, microclimate, concentrated in one place. Not just city, it's statement. We can live anywhere, even where life shouldn't exist. But stone and engineering are just shell. Real strength of Inca Empire wasn't in buildings, it was in people. And people survived not just through technology, but through how they organized society. Try surviving Andes alone. Built a house, grew crops. Then you got sick. Who brings water, cooks food, tends fields? Nobody. You die. Incas understood. At altitude, individualism is suicide. Survival means community. Ailu, extended family. Not just parents and kids, multiple generations, cousins, their relatives. 50 to 100 people connected by blood or marriage. Living together, working together, sharing harvest. Land belonged to Ailu, not individuals. Each family got plot based on size. More kids, more land. This was dynamic resource allocation adapting to needs. But land wasn't property. Couldn't sell or transfer it to outsiders. After death, it returned to communal pool and was redistributed. Prevented wealth concentration in one family. Aini, reciprocity principle. Your house burned? Ailu rebuilds it in days. Sick during harvest? Neighbors collect your crops. But this isn't charity. It's exchange. Today I help you, tomorrow you help me. Not slave labor. Collective survival. Mita, collective labor on big projects. Building terrace, repairing bridge, constructing temple. Whole Ayu comes together. Men move stones, women cook, kids help where they can. But there's harsh truth. If you refuse working, if you don't pull your weight, Ayu can expel you. Being expelled in Andes means death. Nobody survives alone. Kuraka, Ayu leader, not ruler, organizer. Distributes work, resolves disputes, represents Ayu to state. His power based on respect, not force. Modern tourists live in hotels, pay money for services, move on. Andean peoples still live in Ayus. They understand. Money won't warm you at night when it's cold. Only a neighbor who brings firewood will. But even strongest community couldn't exist without state. And Inca state had its price, mita, labor system still debated today. Imagine state comes to you saying, next 3 months you work for empire, building roads or terraces or temples, no pay. Your reaction? Outrage. That's forced labor. But in Inca Empire, mita wasn't slavery, it was taxes. Instead of money, you paid with time and effort. Why? Because empire had no money, no market economy. How does state function without cash taxes? It takes labor.
Each ayu obligated to provide certain number of workers for certain time, usually young men capable of hard physical work. They went building roads, bridges, terraces, palaces, temples. Service term typically 3 to 6 months yearly, not lifetime. After finishing, you returned to your ayu. Next year, someone else went. State provided for you during mita. Food from state warehouses, tools, clothing if needed. Not work and die. It was work and we'll care for you. But there's a catch. Work was brutal. Carrying tons-heavy stones up slopes, digging terraces in hard soil, building bridges over chasms. People died from exhaustion, accidents, disease.
Sound of mita, groaning from strain when dozens of men pull massive stone on ropes. Rhythmic shouts synchronizing effort, smell of sweat mixed with dust. But mita had upside. Roads you built served whole empire. Terraces fed everyone. Bridges connected valleys. You worked for state, but state worked for you. Also, mita was insurance. When drought hit your valley, state opened warehouses. Where'd food come from? From terraces built through mita. When your ayu starved, Chasqui brought grain. How'd they arrive? On roads built through mita. Spaniards saw mita, called it slavery, but they misunderstood system. In slavery, you work forever, your children too. In mita, you work months, then you're free. Difference is fundamental. Modern states take cash taxes. Incas took labor. Both systems are coercive, both necessary for state functioning. Question isn't, is it fair, but does it work? But mita is material system. For mountain life, you need more. You need to accept constant death risk. And here, religion becomes not luxury, but necessity. You're standing at cliff edge, 300 feet down to rocks. Wind pushes your back. One wrong step, death. You feel paralyzing fear. Andean stands beside you calmly. Why? Because he believes mountain is alive. It has soul. Either it accepts you or rejects you. Apu, mountain spirits. Each major peak has its apu. Not symbolism. For Andean peoples, this is reality. Mountain watches you, judges your behavior, respect intentions. Before climbing, Incas made offerings. Coca leaves, corn, textiles, placed by stone or at pass. Not sacrifice to sky god, gift to spirit living in rock beneath your feet. Why important? Because at altitude, death is daily risk. Rock can fall, bridge can break, avalanche can strike. You can't control everything, but you can believe if you behave right, Apu protects you. This is psychological survival mechanism. Belief gives calm. Calm gives clear thinking. Clear thinking saves life on narrow trail over chasm. Inti, sun god, main Inca deity. Emperor called Sapa Inca, only sun's son. Not just title, religious legitimization of power. But Inti wasn't distant god. He was visible daily. Sun warming terraces, giving life to plants, drying food. Inti was practical god for practical people. Pachamama, Mother Earth, fertility goddess, harvest, soil. Before planting, Incas made libations, poured chicha on ground. First feed Pachamama, then yourself. Religious ceremonies at altitude, mountain silence, smoke from offerings, quiet chanting. Not grand temples with choirs, intimate rituals under open sky. Capacocha, child sacrifices. Incas sacrificed children to Apu during crises, drought, earthquake, emperor's death. Children selected for beauty and health climbed peak summits and were left there, often under coca and alcohol influence, to freeze. Horrifying by modern ethics, but for Incas this was highest honor. Child became mediator between people and gods. Her body, mummified by cold, remained on mountain forever. Archaeologists still find these mummies, preserved by cold and dryness above 20,000 feet. They tell story of faith so strong people gave what they valued most. Modern tourists view mountains as scenery. Andean peoples view mountains as living beings. Not just belief difference, it's reality perception difference. But religion is only part of psychological adaptation. Real endurance is instilled in childhood when body and mind learn living with altitude.
Child born at 14,000 feet. First breath, thin air. Lungs open, grasping for oxygen that's catastrophically scarce. Many infants don't survive first months. Those who do are already adapted. Incas didn't wait for kids to grow before preparing them. Training started at birth. Infants carried on mothers' backs in textile slings. Mother worked in field, climbed slopes, carried loads, baby with her. Not just convenience, it's training. Baby's body adjusted to movement, altitude, temperature swings. At 3 to 4, kids already helped. Not heavy work, but accessible tasks. Collecting dry grass for fire, watching young llamas, carrying small loads. Like progressive loading, muscles strengthen, endurance grows. At 6 to 7, kids went with adults on day trips. 10 to 15 miles on mountain trails. Climbs, descents, narrow ledges. Kid who stumbled learned balance. Kid who gasped learned proper breathing. Girls learned weaving, cooking, livestock care, but not in warm rooms. Outdoors, in cold, in wind. Fingers froze, but hands kept working, training discomfort tolerance. Boys learned carrying loads. First small grain bags, then heavier. By teens, a boy could carry 40 pounds on his back all day. Not because Incas were cruel, because life was cruel. Kids' games mimicked adult life. They built miniature terraces from stones, played shepherds with llamas, raced who climbs slope fastest. Not just entertainment, preparation. Kids also learned tolerating pain, not through sadism, but necessity. At altitude, you'll fall, hit yourself, scrape knees. If every scratch causes panic, you can't function. Kids learned, get up, dust off, keep going. Modern city kids ascend altitude and panic at slightest discomfort. Andean kids were born in discomfort. They don't know other life, and that's their advantage. But even best physical training is worthless without psychological stability, and altitude psychology has its peculiarities. At 14,000 feet, your brain gets 40% less oxygen. This affects not just body, but mind. Decisions come slower, emotions unstable. Small problem seems catastrophic. Picture you're walking, narrow trail, right side cliff, heart pounding, head spinning from oxygen lack. Suddenly foot slips on stone. Panic explodes instantly. You frantically grab cliff, scream, lose balance. Andean, in same situation, stops. Breathe slowly, assesses situation, finds stable foothold, continues walking. Difference isn't bravery, it's trained self-control. Coca helps. We discussed physical effects, but there's psychological one too. Mild euphoria from alkaloids reduces anxiety, like natural Xanax. Not enough to lose vigilance, but enough to avoid panic. Meditative life rhythm. At altitude, everything happens slower. Not because people are lazy, because oxygen deficit forces cautious movement. Haste equals mistake equals death.
Andean peoples speak slowly, move slowly, think before acting. Not cultural quirk, adaptation to conditions where every action costs more energy than at sea level. Silence of mountain silence. Not absolute silence. Wind whistling, distant water noise, occasional bird cry, but silence without city noise, without constant stimulation. Brain learns functioning in calm. Religion helps psychologically. Belief in Apu, that mountain protects you if you behave right, removes some anxiety. Not self-deception, it's coping mechanism. You can't control everything, but you can believe something bigger controls for you. Ailu collective psychology matters too. You're not alone with your fear. Others nearby understand because they feel same. Like group therapy built into social structure. But there's dark side. Depression at altitude is real. Oxygen deficit affects serotonin production. People become gloomy, apathetic. Suicide rates in highland regions higher than lowlands. Incas fought this through community. Rituals, festivals, collective work. Everything giving sense of belonging, purpose, connection. Because loneliness at altitude kills as effectively as cold. Modern climbers at extreme heights describe psychological changes, hallucinations, feeling of alien presence, intrusive thoughts. Andean peoples live on edge of these effects constantly, but they learned existing with this. Altitude psychology isn't just endurance, it's system of trained reactions, religious beliefs, and social support working together to keep mind stable where it naturally wants to panic. But all these mechanisms birthed culture that seems strange to outsiders. Culture of slowness, calm, deliberation, that's direct consequence of living in thin air. Tourist arrives in Cusco, exits bus, checks watch, walks briskly to hotel. 5 minutes later, gasping. 10 minutes, sits on curb, clutching head, heart pounding at limit. Local passes by, slowly, very slowly. Tourist thinks, why's he so slow? Does he have all day? Answer, yes, he has all day. Because at altitude, haste wastes energy and invites altitude sickness. Andean culture is slowness culture, not from laziness, from physiological necessity. Conversations. At lowlands, dialogue is quick reply exchange. In Andes, slow talk with pauses. Person speaks sentence, pauses, thinks, speaks next. Listener doesn't rush responding either. Not about disrespect, about speaking fast, meaning breathing fast. Fast breathing at altitude exhausts. Slow speech equals energy conservation plus sufficient thinking time. Food. Lowlands lunch takes 20 minutes. Andes, an hour or more. Not because food's abundant, because eating must be slow, thoroughly chewing. Fast eating equals fast breathing equals discomfort. Smell of slowly cooked food at altitude. Aroma spreading for hours. Boiled potatoes, stewed meat, quinoa. No quick searing on high heat. Everything simmers, slowly releasing flavor. Walking. Tourist tries climbing fast like Jim. Local climbs small steps, stops every few minutes. Not from weakness, from experience. He knows better walk slow and arrive than fast and collapse. Work. Lowlands values hourly productivity. Andes values task completion without exhaustion. Better do 1 terrace daily with quality than attempt 3 and collapse from overexertion. Like switching from sprint to marathon. Altitude life is lifelong marathon. Winners aren't who run fast, but who endure distance. Social norms reflect this. Who rushes looks inexperienced, maybe even dangerous to self and others. Who moves slowly and deliberately earns respect. But there's paradox. This slowness isn't choice. It's physiological limitation turned into cultural virtue. When Andean peoples descend to lowlands, they're often surprised. Why's everyone rushing? Why doesn't anyone stop to think? And for them, returning to altitude is relief. There, life moves at their rhythm, because everyone else lives with same limitation. Modern world cultivates speed, fast internet, fast food, fast decisions. Andes cultivate slowness, and there's wisdom in this. Sometimes slow isn't worse, it's just different. But can these ancient survival strategies work in modern world? Are there lessons for us? And most importantly, why does modern human, with all their technology, still lose to mountains? Plane lands at Cusco Airport. Elevation 11,000 feet. Tourist exits, feels slight dizziness, ignores it. I'm healthy, I'll be fine. 6 hours later, lying in hotel with nausea and headache. 12 hours, vomiting. 24 hours, calling doctor. What went wrong? Speed. Andean peoples adapted over millennia of evolution, plus lifetime at altitude. Tourist tries adapting in hours, like trying to run Windows on a calculator. System can't handle it. Acclimatization recommendations are simple. Ascend slowly, max 1,000 to 1,500 feet daily above 8,000. Sleep lower than you climbed. Drink tons of water. Don't overexert first days. Tourists systematically ignore this. They paid for tour, have limited time, want to see everything now. Their bodies pay the price. Statistics: 50 to 70% of tourists ascending above 10,000 feet quickly experience altitude sickness symptoms. Mild for most, serious for 10 to 15%. Oxygen bottles in hotels, Diamox pills to stimulate breathing, coca tea as placebo, helps but weakly. This is industry built on human body's failure to handle altitude without preparation. Sound of oxygen concentrator in hotel room, humming, hissing. Tourist breathing through mask, trying to overcome nausea. Outside, local kids run and laugh at same altitude. Worst part? Overconfidence. Young, healthy people think, I work out, I'm fit. But sea level fitness doesn't equal altitude adaptation. Marathon runner from lowlands can collapse where Andean grandmother calmly climbs with her load. Worse stories exist. Tourists hiking Machu Picchu trail without acclimatization. People attempting 20,000 footers like Huascarán in a week. Some return with frostbite, some in coffins. Mountains aren't hostile, they just exist. Either you're ready or you're not. Haste in mountains doesn't save time. It costs health, sometimes life. But why do people take this risk consciously? Why does modern human, knowing dangers, still ascend? Answers more complex than it seems. Andean goes to mountains because it's his life. He doesn't choose risk. Risk is part of his existence. He minimizes it through knowledge, experience, slowness. Modern tourist goes to mountains consciously, pays money, takes vacation, flies thousands of miles. Why? Some say nature's beauty. But beauty exists at lowlands too, without altitude sickness risk. Some say challenge myself. But many challenges don't risk life. Real answer: modern life is sterile. We live in air-conditioned rooms, drive safe cars, work at computers. Risk is eliminated from daily life. Part of humanity hungers for it. Mountains provide what cities can't: real possibility of dying. Not in car crash through someone else's error, but through your own decision. actions, mistake. This returns sense of control through paradox. You risk, but risk depends on you. Incas didn't have this question. They lived with risk constantly. It wasn't existential choice, it was routine. They didn't romanticize danger. They tried avoiding it. Modern mountaineering romanticizes. Conquer peak, defeat mountain, prove myself. This is conquest language. But you can't conquer mountains. They either let you climb or don't. Your role isn't battle, it's adaptation. There's a quote, "Mountains aren't built to be conquered. They exist to remind us of scale." Andean understands this instinctively. Tourist learns it through pain. But there's another aspect. Some go to mountains because there they feel alive. Discomfort, cold, exhaustion, fear. States sharply contrasting with modern life's softened comfort. In this contrast, they find something important. Sound of your own breathing at altitude when you're alone on trail, meditation through exhaustion. Complete presence in moment because distraction equals falling. Incas didn't seek this deliberately, but they lived in this state constantly. Maybe that's why their culture had such depth of calm, caution, respect for nature. They couldn't afford arrogance. Modern world cultivates arrogance. Human is nature's master. Mountains teach humility. Those who don't learn get the lesson most brutally. But is there anything useful in these lessons? Can modern medicine learn from peoples who survived altitude without technology?
When Western medicine first encountered Andean peoples, doctors were confused. Blood tests showed pathology, too many red cells. Hearts were enlarged, lungs abnormal. But people were healthy, productive, long-lived. What was happening? Medicine then based on norms derived from lowland populations. These norms worked for most humanity, but they didn't account for altitude adaptation. Coca leaf, first example. Western medicine banned coca as drug, equating it with cocaine. But chewing leaves isn't cocaine use. Alkaloid dose is dozens of times smaller. Effect is mild, doesn't cause addiction with traditional use. Modern research shows coca does help with altitude sickness, reduces fatigue, improves oxygen absorption. This is folk medicine that works. But through cultural and political reasons, it remains banned in most of the world. Diamox, acetazolamide, drug prescribed to tourists for acclimatization. Stimulates breathing, accelerates red cell production. Essentially, it mimics natural adaptation. But it's a crutch, not solution. Has side effects: finger tingling, carbonated drink taste changes, frequent urination. Andean peoples don't need Diamox. Their bodies do same naturally, without chemistry. Altitude adaptation research gave medicine understanding of hypoxia, oxygen deficit state. Important not just for climbers, for treating lung diseases, heart failure, anemia. Understanding how body handles oxygen lack helps develop therapies. Altitude training for athletes, another lesson. Olympic teams train in mountains to increase red cell count. When athlete descends to lowlands, blood carries oxygen more efficiently. Legal doping using natural mechanisms. But there are limits. Artificial hypobaric chamber simulating altitude isn't same as living there. Body adapts complexly. Hormones, muscles, metabolism, psychology. Can't fully replicate this in lab. Andean diet interests researchers too. Potatoes, quinoa, superfoods Western world discovered recently. Incas used them millennia. Quinoa contains all essential amino acids, rare for plant food. Potatoes are resilient, caloric, grow in extremes. Smell of fresh harvested quinoa, nutty, slightly grassy. Western world sells it in expensive health stores. Andean peoples eat it daily, like we eat rice.
Medicine returns to studying traditional practices, not as primitive superstitions, but as strategies refined over millennia. Not everything works, much is just superstition, but some works amazingly well. Lessons simple. Nature already ran millions of adaptation experiments. Sometimes better to study these experiment results than invent everything from scratch. But are there long-term benefits to altitude living? Can Andean peoples boast not just survival, but longevity?
Popular myth: people living in mountains live longer. Mountains make healthier. Clean air, physical activity, simple food, longevity recipe. Reality's more complex. Statistics show life expectancy in highland regions often lower than lowlands. Why? Because oxygen deficit is constant body stress. Heart works at limit, lungs under load. This wears body faster. But there's nuance. If you're born at altitude, your body's adapted. You don't feel stress like tourist does. For you, it's normal. And in this case, altitude can have protective effects. Lower rates of some cancers. Research confirms this. Hypoxia slows some tumor growth. Not all, but some. Mechanism isn't fully understood, but correlation exists. Lower obesity risk. At altitude, metabolism's faster, appetite often reduced. Hard gaining excess weight when every calorie burns maintaining basic functions. But there are downsides. Higher cardiovascular disease rates in some groups. Thick blood creates clot risk. Enlarged heart can cause problems in old age. Women at altitude often birth lower weight babies. This is adaptation. Smaller baby requires less oxygen in womb. But low birth weight is future health risk. Depression and mental disorders more frequent at extreme altitudes. Oxygen deficit affects brain, neurotransmitter production. This is adaptation's price. So, do Andean peoples live longer? Not necessarily, but they live differently. Their bodies function at human organisms' limits, not always meaning longevity, but meaning resilience. Interestingly, Andean peoples moving to lowlands often experience health problems. Their bodies adapted to altitude so thoroughly that normal oxygen becomes excessive, like running engine tuned for low-octane fuel on high-octane. System doesn't know how to process it. Sound of Andean breathing at lowlands. Deeper, slower. They often complain, "It's stuffy here, air's too thick." For them, comfortable air is thin. Lesson for modernity. Adaptation has cost. Altitude makes body more resilient to some challenges, but more vulnerable to others. Not universal improvement, specialization. Most important, this specialization is disappearing. Modern world changes even Andes. These changes threaten unique adaptations developed over millennia. Young Andean village resident looks at smartphone. Sees videos from Lima, from coast. It's warm there. Jobs exist there. Medicine, schools, entertainment. Why stay here where it's cold, hard, where life is constant struggle? He leaves. His brother leaves too. His sister's already there. Village empties. Urbanization kills highland communities. Youth move to cities. Elderly remain. When elderly die, knowledge dies with them. Knowledge of which potato varieties grow at which altitude, how to read weather from clouds, when to plant avoiding frost, how to weave bridges, how to make chuño, how to organize mita. Not written in books, passed orally through practice. If nobody's there to receive it, it vanishes forever. Modern medicine comes to mountains. Good, child mortality drops, infections get treated. But with medicine come lowland habits. Kids eat candy and chips instead of quinoa. Adults drink soda instead of coca tea. First generation of Andean peoples with obesity and diabetes. Their bodies adapted to calorie deficit, simple food. Western diet overload system not designed for excess. Roads reach remote villages. Good. Easier food transport, medical access, world connection. But with roads comes tourism. Tourism changes economy. Why grow potatoes when selling souvenirs to tourists pays more? Why maintain terraces when opening hotel earns better? Economic logic's compelling, but it destroys system that worked millennia. Genetic adaptation threatened too. Andean peoples marry lowlanders. Their children are hybrids. Have some adaptations, not all. After several generations, unique genetic variants dilute into general population. Not apocalypse, natural evolution, but means uniqueness loss. Andean peoples become just people living at altitude with technology help, not people whose bodies were built for altitude. Climate changes. Andean glaciers melt. Water sources feeding terraces for millennia dry up. Temperatures become unstable. Ancient weather knowledge stops working because weather changes faster than knowledge can adapt. Disappearing sound. Mountain silence when last village resident closes door and descends to valley. Empty house remains, neglected terraces, bridge nobody repairs anymore. Not nostalgia for good old days. Old days were hard, often brutal, but they held knowledge tested over millennia. When knowledge vanishes, impossible to say whether we'll need it in future. What if modern civilization faces crisis? What if technology fails? Who'll remember how to survive at altitude without oxygen bottles, without heating, without food delivery? Maybe nobody. But there's hope. Some communities consciously preserve traditions. Some young people return, understanding value of what they almost lost. Not mass movement, but something. Lesson: progress doesn't always mean loss, but it requires conscious choice. What to preserve, what to change. Most important, understand what you're losing before losing it forever. You're standing at Pass Summit, 16,000 feet. Wind hits face. Air so thin each breath is work. Around, mountains rising higher, vanishing in clouds. You're tourist. You feel terrible. Headaches, heart pounds, legs barely hold. You look at local guide. He stands calmly, breathes evenly, smiles. Difference between you isn't strength, not courage. Difference is understanding. He understands mountains, not intellectually, on body level. His lungs know how to breathe. His heart knows how to beat. His muscles know how to move. This is knowledge built by millennia of evolution and lifetime at altitude. You don't understand mountains. Your body fights them, tries conquering them, and loses. Because mountains can't be conquered. They can only be understood and accepted. Incas understood this long ago. They didn't try changing mountains. They changed themselves. Biologically, technologically, socially, psychologically. Every aspect of their civilization was response to altitude challenge. Lungs and hearts adapted to oxygen deficit. Diet provided energy. Chuño preserved food. Coca eased discomfort. Houses retained heat. Aqueducts managed water. Terraces created farmland. Roads connected empire. Ailu provided support. Mita built infrastructure. Religion gave meaning. Slowness conserved energy. Every detail had function.
No decoration for beauty's sake, only survival. Modern human comes to mountains with different philosophy. Wants fast, wants comfortable, wants to conquer. And mountains show, here your rules don't work. Not just about altitude. This is metaphor for any extreme environment. Deserts, oceans, polar regions. Humans survive not through domination, but through adaptation. Incas weren't perfect. Their society was hierarchical, sometimes cruel. They warred, conquered, sacrificed. But in one thing they were genius. They knew how to live with nature that kills you if you don't respect it. Modern world loses this understanding. We live in controlled environment bubbles. Temperature always comfortable, food always accessible, risk minimized. And we forget this isn't normal. This is anomaly in human history. Most of our existence we lived like Andean peoples, in harsh conditions where every day was challenge. We adapted, we survived, we thrived not despite nature, but in harmony with it. Mountains remind us of this. They're not enemies, they're teachers. They show you're small, weak, vulnerable. But if you're willing to learn, willing to adapt, willing to respect, you can live even where life shouldn't exist. Sound of wind at summit. Not fury, just wind. Not trying to push you off, just existing. Your task? Find balance to stand. Incas found this balance. Their empire fell to conquistadors, but their descendants still live in mountains, still use terraces, still chew coca, still walk trails laid 500 years ago. They survived, not because they were stronger, but because they understood. To survive means to understand. Understand place where you live. Understand your body's limits. Understand nature isn't obligated to be comfortable for you. Maybe the most important lesson for modernity. Technology helps, but it doesn't replace understanding. Oxygen bottle lets you breathe at altitude, but it doesn't make you part of mountains. Only time, respect, and willingness to change do that. We've traveled far, from blood biochemistry to survival philosophy, from terraced slopes to vanishing knowledge, from bridge engineering to slowness psychology. Incas weren't superhumans. They were humans who understood simple truth. Nature doesn't adapt to you. You adapt to it, or die. Millennia of evolution, generations of trial and error, endless learning, all created civilization capable of living where modern human gasps within hours. Not magic, just understanding. Today, we live in a world where most challenges get solved by technology. Cold? Turn on heat. Hungry? Order delivery. Tired? Call Uber. We forget our bodies can do much more if we're willing to learn. Andean peoples remind us of this. Their lungs, blood, hearts aren't anomalies. They're examples of what human body can do when it has sufficient time and reason to adapt. But time's running out. Urbanization, climate change, globalization, everything changes mountains faster than ever. Unique adaptations dissolve. Knowledge gets forgotten. Maybe in 100 years, nobody will remember how to live at altitude without technology. Not necessarily tragedy, but it's loss. Loss of diversity, experience, knowledge. And when you lose something, you never know for sure whether you'll need it again someday. So, if you ever find yourself in mountains, stop. Breathe slowly. Look around. Remember, thousands of years people lived here without oxygen bottles, without heating, without GPS. They survived. They thrived. Not because they were stronger, but because they understood mountains. Maybe we should learn something from them before this knowledge vanishes forever. Drop a comment,
Have you been at high altitude? How'd you feel? What surprised you most about Inca adaptation? Always curious to hear from those joining us. Sleep well, friends. May your dreams be peaceful as mountain silence after sunset.